Welcome to Tangential Soup, a weekly podcast discussing life in Australia, technology, food, fitness, and the like, hosted by myself, David Caddy, Melburnian, independent developer and tea enthusiast, as well as my good childhood friend Alexander Carr, Sydney-sider, karate practitioner, and lover of adventure. So you wanted to talk about Married at First Sight, did you, Alex? Do you watch this religiously?
I do not, no.
Like Z and I do?
Oh, you do you? And
Yes.
do you enjoy it?
My mum's pretty keen on it too. It's pretty entertaining. Last season, especially with the Australian one, was quite entertaining.
Okay.
This current one seems a little forced at the moment, but it's still not bad.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, I just... it kind of pops up on the news for me, and I've been seeing it advertised everywhere.
Certainly is popular.
It is really popular, actually. I think it's one of the more popular Australian television series around at the moment. So what kind of brought it to my attention recently was an article that popped up on ABC News titled "Could Married at First Sight be part of Australia's soft power push in the Pacific?" Now, of course, Australia is always trying to bump up its influence a bit and make itself known in that area of the world and establish strong political and economic connections and everything like that. And basically what the article is saying is Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister who we discussed last week, has decided that he's going to put forward a $17 million package to broadcast Australian commercial television throughout the Pacific region. Now, just as a broad point, what do you kind of think of this, David?
I mean, it's interesting. When they say that, what sort of reach is it going to have?
That is a good question. I didn't see anything in the article about where it is, but I assume it will be through the Asia and Pacific region. So that would be all up through I guess Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, and I suppose maybe up around possibly Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and that area.
This is all free-to-air television?
Well, okay, so we haven't yet been told exactly what shows will be broadcast. I think the title itself was perhaps a bit misleading because nobody is actually sure whether Married at First Sight will be one of the shows to broadcast, but it seems likely because it is, I think, as I've said, one of the more popular TV shows in Australia at the moment. I think for Nine, it's the most popular show that they broadcast in this particular category of reality TV shows. So certainly, if it were based on popularity, then yes, it would be a pick. But I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the show. I don't even think I've seen a single episode of it because I don't watch TV. We don't even have an antenna. But I mean, to me, the premise of the show seems a bit...
Although you don't need an antenna to watch TV anymore. You can get it through the Freeview app and then put it on the Chromecast.
Oh, you can. That's true, actually, yeah. Well, I haven't done that either. And I don't think I'm going to start doing it, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. The premise of the TV show just seems a bit far-fetched to me. So they don't actually get married, I think is my first major point that I wanted to make here.
At least the Australian one.
In Australia, they do not get married. They have a commitment ceremony.
Apparently in the New Zealand one they do, at least in the first series.
Well, yes, it just makes me think, like, marriage is a legal institution, I guess. And what have they undertaken when they've decided to get married on this TV show? Because there are a lot of legal commitments that come with marriage, like parting with half of your goods and everything like that. Maybe there's a prenup involved. I don't know. I mean, it would make sense for them to have a prenup involved.
That's why they can't actually legally get married here without meeting prior.
Right.
Because you've got to go register or something. I can't remember. I looked this up ages ago, and there's like 24 hours after you've both signed a thing. So they would have to have met 24 hours beforehand, but that would ruin the TV reveal moment. So they can't do that.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, well, it's not the worst thing in the world. And another thing that I suppose is on everybody's mind is, do they go and consummate the marriage immediately? I mean, is it something that's covered in the TV series?
Oh, of course they talk about sex. It's really dependent on the couples. Some straight away, some never do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
I think that's intense. That's very intense. How are they chosen exactly to be married?
Well, there was I think, what did they say, 10,000 singles that put their hand up for this series. So someone's got to weed through all them. They have sort of these three, they're kind of hosts, but they're not. They all have, I think, some sort of sociology degree of some sort, but they're called the experts.
Oh, okay.
So we're led to believe that through a series of somewhat scientific, I'm doing air quotes, methods.
I heard them.
Yes. They're sort of matched up. But in reality, it's probably more the producers trying to figure out, a couple of matches that'll be good and, have a nice sort of vibe, and hopefully they'll get along and they'll have, a couple of the couples get to the end and be in a pretty good place. But then probably most of them, I would say, are chosen in a way that they'll have a bit of friction. So there's some good stuff to film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose as long as it's entertaining, that's the important thing, right?
Because with this current one, there were sort of two couples that were going along quite well, and then one sort of has just left because it sort of all fell in a heap. But then there's probably one, I feel like, at least they'll get to the end of the experiment and they'll probably still be together. Now, that happens fairly regularly, that most of them will actually get all the way through. But I think as soon as the whole thing ends, then most of them just go their separate ways.
Yes. Okay. Well, that makes sense to me.
I don't think any of the last lot are still together.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously these experts.
I know. And yet there's more and more people putting their hand up, so I guess they don't really care about results.
No.
They just want to be on TV.
Do you know, this actually reminds me of something a lot less successful, but for me equally as ludicrous. The TV show Yasmin's Getting Married.
Never saw that. Although
no,
I think
not
I
many
saw
people
ads
did. Not many people did, because it was very short-lived. I think it had, how many episodes were there? There were 2 episodes.
Ooh, long-running series.
No, sorry, 4 episodes. 4 episodes, my mistake. But it was a very similar premise. There was a single lady, there were a panel of experts, and they decided whether, or some potential matches for her, and then she went out and met them and did what she could. And the program flopped after 4 episodes. But maybe there weren't enough people kind of around and trying. It was just a single Yasmin.
Yeah, maybe, because if you watch the show, often some couples you'll basically not see them at all for maybe 1 or 2 episodes.
Yes.
Probably because they haven't done anything particularly interesting. So they focus on the other ones that are a bit more entertaining. And so I guess if you have that, then you can carry a whole season.
Yes.
So let's be clear, this is a trash program, but it is quite entertaining.
Okay, well, that's good. Would you say it well represents Australia and what we're trying to get through to the Asia Pacific region?
Maybe if we're really pushing the whole Bogan angle.
Would you say that the socio-economic class of the candidates is usually a bit lower?
Probably the more entertaining ones, right? Which is what they focus on more. As a broad spectrum, they probably do okay. Yeah. But the majority of the airtime probably goes to that kind of group, and all the ladies have, are full of collagen.
Got to get ready for TV, right?
Yeah, a lot of Instagrammers and things. Right, so it's probably not really representative of Australia.
Okay.
I don't know. I probably don't think it would be as entertainment value only. I don't know what the goal of this is necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose to get eyeballs, you've got to have an entertaining show. So
Well,
I guess if you had that mixed in with other things, it would be okay.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, I think the main kind of export from, say, China, that I know of at least, in terms of TV shows, to Australia that I guess white Australians watch would be If You Are the One.
Oh, yeah, that one.
And that's just basically made funny by the fact that it's just a bunch of ruthless girls ripping into
Yes.
a single guy.
Those poor fellas.
Yes. So, I mean, maybe it works.
Maybe.
It works.
Yeah, maybe the demographic sort of likes those kind of dating shows.
Yeah. Well, look, I guess on to more kind of screen-related things. I saw Aquaman recently, and I thought I could do a short review of it.
Oh, yes? Any good?
Um,
Is this Marvel still? I should know this.
DC.
It's DC, okay.
So, I guess the difference between Marvel and DC is
One's typically good, one's typically not so great.
that is pretty much the difference.
At least in the movies.
Yeah, and DC is the one that's typically not so great.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny, because in my mind, DC have the more famous superheroes.
They do.
I mean, Batman and Superman, right? They're the two kind of DC hooks.
Yep.
And they're probably the two most well known. And I mean, before Marvel started to get big with their movie or franchise, did I know Iron Man? I didn't know Iron Man. All I knew was the Iron Giant. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I haven't seen that in a long time though. I think Axel did that. I should watch it at some point though. I'm pretty sure it's a bit of a cult classic.
It is.
Got nothing to do with Iron Man though.
Nothing to do with it. Well, I mean, it is a man-shaped robot that is made of iron.
Yes. But Iron Man's an actual man, not a robot.
He is, with an iron suit, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, DC's not very good.
Wonder Woman was pretty good though.
Well, you say that. I watched Wonder Woman when it came onto Netflix, and I very much was not impressed.
No?
Yeah.
Oh,
Did you watch it in the movies?
I did.
I think it has something to do with the movies, because look, I saw Aquaman and I didn't hate it.
Rave reviews.
Well, I mean, if I had to give it a star rating out of 10, it'd probably be about a 6, but you know, it's better than the other ones I've seen. So the first Superman I didn't mind. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. The Batmans have been okay, getting progressively worse. That Batman versus Superman was ridiculously terrible. And Aquaman has been alright. So basically what it's about is there's a race of kind of super humans, or I guess they're not superhumans, super fish humans, who live under the ocean, and one of them kind of plops out of the sea and meets a man, and they have a child, and turns out she's the queen of Atlantis, which is where she came from. So she has to then go back to Atlantis because, you know, she's got some queenly obligations, and she's got to remarry even though she loved this man of the land instead of the man of the sea. And then the other king finds about her promiscuity and sacrifices her to the sea monsters. And their child, who is Aquaman, as you probably guessed, grows up and just has a whole bunch of zany adventures.
What's his ability?
Well, it's a bit unclear why exactly, but he's super strong. He's got kind of like super strength.
Is he stronger than the other marine people?
No, not really. Well, yeah, I mean, he's strong. It's not really clear why he's strong, because he hasn't really trained very hard. But he's strong. So he has a brother who is kind of evil in the film. And his brother is about as strong as he is. So no, not really. You know, he's up there in strength because he's got royal blood, and apparently that means something. But you know, he's not strong. The plot was ridiculous. I actually wrote something down, so I'm going to read it out to you. So the pros were, it's got pretty good CGI. I mean, the movie looks really nice. And I think that's why I didn't enjoy Wonder Woman, because I feel like off the big screen you can't appreciate the CGI, and that's really what makes it good.
Okay.
It had, that I can remember, it had a single funny moment. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's very close to the start.
Bring up expectations only to have them dashed.
Yeah. Now, the actor I really like, Jason Momoa, or whatever his name is. Jonah Momoa, someone. I like him. He's a funny actor. If you've seen Game of Thrones, he's Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. He's good. He's good. But the cons are it has plot holes big enough for a pod of whales to swim through. And just those ridiculous inconsistencies that I'm pretty sure I've ranted about before, but they get me every time. And I think that really they kind of come about as soon as it suits the plot for them to do so. So what I'm talking about is the fact that you've got these superhuman creatures, fish people thingies, and take Aquaman for example. Like, he's beating up baddies, he's not having any problems with it. You know, a single fist lays them low. And then when he gets to one certain bad guy, suddenly they're just sitting there trading blows and banging away at each other and kind of, you know, punching and doing this and that. And, you know, neither of them goes down. And suddenly Aquaman, when before things were just bouncing off him, suddenly he's able to be punched over by a single punch from this guy who is not really any more special than anybody else. So that was the first thing. And that's kind of like the main thing that always gets me. Just those inconsistencies when it suits the plot.
Don't you, when you go watch these type of things, just have to check your brain at the door?
No, I can't turn it off. I just don't understand why they can't have it. To me, it would improve it.
It's just too hard.
It bums me out. It really bums me out. Every time I come out, I'm like, oh. And I feel like I honestly feel like for these superhero movies, they just don't try with the plot. It feels like they just literally jotted something down on a napkin at one of their fancy director's lunches when they were knee-deep in cocaine and chauvinistic sexism and inequality. And then that was it. That was the plot. They just, right, okay, Superman, Aquaman, Batman. It's all the same deal. Their parents die or desert them and, you know, they go off and then they become a hero.
Well, I don't know if you can blame the directors for the origin story, though. They did come from the comics, I assume.
See, the thing is, like, if I think about it, though, what's really happened, like, if you watch the Marvel ones, they're not afraid to rewrite the origin stories a little bit. And the fact is, the origin stories were written at a time when you... Actually, I've never read the original comics. The original comics could be a lot more complicated than I'm giving the credit for, but I kind of feel like the origin stories were originally quite simply done, just because that's what kind of suited the comic style at the time. But we're no longer in a stage where we need to do that. We can have dark, interesting characters, and, you know, they don't have to be told through this kind of ridiculously simplistic narrative.
This is true, but they tend to get raked over the coals as soon as they step away from the source material.
But you don't have to step away from the source material to add a little bit of pizzazz.
No, you don't.
Because, I mean, like, these characters, I think the problem is really about them is they're so one-dimensional. I mean, Batman is just ridiculously one-dimensional. He's this guy who runs around. He doesn't kill anybody, for one, and that really gets me. Because, like, if you're having a gun fired at you, you can't not kill someone and just punch them out. Just, no, it's wrong. To me,
it is.
It's wrong. Anyway, that's my rant about these superhero movies. Overall, what did I give it? A 6 out of 10? And it's lucky to get that, because they really put very little effort into it.
It's pretty high after all the things you said. Good CGI gets you 6.
Well, yeah. I like Jason Momoa, or whatever his name is.
Okay. But Spider-Man was good.
Well, Spider-Man was good, yes. I saw that a while ago. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was very funny and just unexpected for me. I went to it... I wouldn't say I got dragged along necessarily, but it wouldn't have been my pick. If I'd been picking a movie, it would not have been Spider-Man. But I went and I was very pleasantly surprised. It did all the right things for me.
So watch that, not so much Aquaman, unless you're a big fan.
Even if you're a big fan, I feel like the people that made this are just kind of, they're making fun of fans of superheroes at the moment. DC are, at least.
Well, I suppose they went the other way, and that wasn't super successful for them. Like the super dark moodiness.
Well, I think the problem is they just had a very one-dimensional, super dark moodiness. Because, I mean, like, I feel like they really went super dark and moody with Batman, but he wasn't actually very super dark or super moody. I mean, he was super moody, but it was more like kind of very petulant emo child than actual darkness.
Yeah, and I guess they had some mild success with that at the start, and they tried to saturate everything they did with that kind of feel.
Yes.
People got sick of that, especially as Marvel started to pick up the game.
Yes.
And now they're, I guess, trying to go in another direction, but not really hitting it quite.
Yes, yes.
I saw that Netflix has cancelled all their Marvel shows now.
Do you see, I don't think they've cancelled them. I think that Marvel have pulled their deal with Netflix or something, because Netflix doesn't have any of its Marvel content anymore.
Little of column A, little of column B. So Netflix a while ago signed fairly long-term deals for some of Marvel's properties, like Jessica Jones, and I can't remember, there's a couple of other ones.
Punisher?
So yeah, I think that's it. So if Netflix wanted to, they could continue making stuff for those characters sort of in-house, right? Because they own the licensing for that.
Right, okay.
But because they know that's only a short term, like it still might be a few years, I don't know, but they don't want to have anything to do with Marvel now that Disney is going to start competing with them with their own streaming service.
Right, well that makes sense, yeah.
Of course, Disney now owning all of Marvel and a bunch of Fox stuff. Huge amount of content.
Yes, it is. It is a very large amount of content. Do you think they're going to compete successfully with Netflix?
Probably, given the catalog they have. Like now, I mean, if you take all of the Marvel franchises, right, which none of them, or there might be still some on Netflix, but give it another 12 months, all that's going to go. So that's all the Marvel films.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take all the Disney properties, which, all the animated films, also Pixar is in that.
Okay.
And then you've got various Fox things like Friends and that are distributed through there, which I know Netflix probably still has the right to also share the rights to that for a certain period of time. But it's not probably going to be too long before Netflix is really relying on their original series, which is probably why they saw the writing on the wall however many years ago and really started to pump them out.
I think that when it comes to these streaming services, a big factor is always going to be price, right? I mean, Netflix has upped its prices recently, but if they're trying to compete with Disney, which will be trying to undercut them, I assume, they're probably going to be cutting them down again.
Maybe. They've got a fair number of users, though, and I suppose they're fairly entrenched as long as they're still offering new content for them. Also, Apple's offering is going to come online soon, which is another player.
Their streaming service. Oh, okay.
Yes. So for the last probably 18 months, Apple has been doing a similar thing where they've thrown, I don't know, like $1 billion at trying to make their own content. So they've got all these people working on different series. Now, we haven't seen anything to do with any of them, so they could all be awful, but they also could be good. And they're going to offer a streaming service as well.
So what was essentially Netflix that existed really as the major player, it's suddenly going to be competing with, I mean, obviously there's also the Amazon.
Yep. Amazon
Is it
Prime.
Amazon Prime?
Well, it's sort of part of the Prime package. I think you can just get the video service on its own. I think it's Prime Video is just the video service. And then there's Hulu still there, but that's majoritarily owned by Disney.
Oh, right.
So people expect that Disney will eventually buy that out, and they'll have two streaming services that they may or may not bundle together. But they'll have Hulu for like the more adult-focused content, and they'll have Disney Unlimited or whatever they call it for sort of their more family-friendly content.
Wow, okay. It's funny that Disney would be the one making this play.
Well, Well, they just own so much content when you think they've got all the Star Wars, got all of Marvel, all the Fox stuff, their own Disney stuff and Pixar. Like, it's just a huge catalogue. So why go through a middleman when you can go direct to the customer and get 100% of that revenue?
That is a very good point, actually. Yeah, the world is changing.
Because people sign up for a streaming services for the content. Like, they'll pick one over another depending on if they've got your favourite show or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, that's true. So actually, something that occurs to me is Netflix must be one of the biggest companies, or one of the bigger companies in the world. Netflix, what's Netflix worth?
Still small in technology terms, but it's getting up there. It's certainly got a fair number of users.
So 148 million users is a very large amount of users.
I find it hilarious that Blockbuster could have bought them, but they didn't. They had like 2 opportunities and they're like, yeah, no, pass.
Although, if you think about it, what has made Netflix successful? And would Blockbuster have been able to guide them in the same way that they have managed to guide themselves?
This is true. There's no guarantee. But if they kind of had just sort of bought them but let them operate independently, probably put the Blockbuster name in there, then they'd still be a company instead of dead. But, you live and you learn.
Because, I mean, my thought is that obviously Disney is a very large established company, but by market capitalization, Netflix is actually larger than Disney.
But Disney have so many assets.
They do. Yes.
Like, they've got the theme parks, both physical and their, copyright assets. Like, even Mickey Mouse, like, it's probably no real competition.
No, that's true. All of those assets, whereas Netflix just has servers. I don't even know what they've got.
They have far fewer employees.
It's funny how you hear about all these kind of small come up companies that have started to dominate the tech world now. That could have been bought out by the older competitors that they've since basically made redundant. Like, I think Yahoo and Google are another very good example of that. Yahoo had a couple of opportunities to buy Google and didn't.
Did they? Yeah. And now we've only got Google and Bing.
Do we have Bing though? Really?
Well, at least they still exist. I think pretty sure Yahoo search is no longer a thing, or if it is, they just piggyback off of Bing.
Really?
I suppose there is DuckDuckGo. That sort of more independent-y one.
I have heard of that one.
But in terms of search engines, there aren't many. That's because Google is so good.
Okay, so Yahoo search. Is Yahoo search good? I'm searching this on Yahoo. It does look a lot like Bing, actually.
Yeah, I think it's powered by Bing now. Poor Yahoo. They were such a powerful internet company for a very long time, but now they just don't seem very relevant anymore.
Well, that's true, yeah. And I've noticed they've been trying to delve into the kind of finance related stuff. I don't know why, but they've got their finance center that I sometimes look at.
Okay.
But it feels old. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah, they haven't updated stuff in forever, kind of. So they kind of probably have a core group of users, especially for their email services and things. But I don't think they have any sort of growth in users for anything in particular. Do they still own Flickr, or is that being sold again?
I have no idea. What's Flickr?
Flickr is a place where you can upload photos, but I guess also that is no longer super relevant with Google Photos and other offerings.
Yes.
Thanks again for joining me, Alex.
Not a problem, David. Pleasure as always.
You can follow and get in touch with us on Twitter at Tangential Soup, and you can find this week's show notes and more information about today's topics at tsp.fm/202. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with anyone you think might also, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
Ciao.